What's up, everyone? Welcome to Simulation. I'm your host, Alan Sakyan. Very pumped to now be talking about acting and directing. We have Fei Ren joining us on the show. Hi, Fei.
Hi, Alan. Nice to meet you.
Thanks for coming on the program.
Nice to see you.
I know.
Again.
How cool was it that we got to meet on the flight from Vancouver to San Francisco?
Yeah.
And get a long, deep dive into acting, directing, spirituality. It was super fun.
Very interesting conversation, yeah.
The source putting people together for such interesting reasons. Fei's background's great. She's an actor and director whose work focuses on telling stories to affect positive change. You can find all of her links in the bio below to her Instagram profile, IMDb profile, as well as her most recent appearance on Polar on Netflix. You guys can find that link in the bio below as well. Okay. On the flight, we were talking so much about the nuances of acting and directing and art in general and what it can catalyze for other people when they awaken to these messages that you're trying to convey. So teach us about kind of your journey leading up to the point of where you figured out that you wanted to get involved, and then what really lights your fire in this field.
I feel like when I got into acting at the beginning, it was more like finding a place of cathartic release. So it was a very selfish reason. But regardless, that opened up a whole journey of self-discovery. And one thing really, something I'm always passionate about, whether it's acting, and prior to that, I've been modeling for 11 years, was that the connection I felt during performance, that something really frees me and makes me feel very empowered. And I think with good storytelling, that's kind of what happens. It connects people and resonates. And I think that's what then the purpose for me to become a good actor is to convey better stories and then hopefully positively affects or awake people to. And also, like, when I was watching shows, the best shows, whether it's theater or movies, really taught me things and made me had that big moment. And I think that's essentially what really excites me.
Yeah, this is why I think we were resonating so deeply on the plane, because we both saw it from the very macro level perspective of what art can do to inspire people and awaken them. So, okay, so then the career, rewinding back, so it was, you're born in China.
Born and raised
in China until around 18 or so.
Yeah.
Okay, and then made the move to...
Come to Canada. I went to UBC for psychology.
To UBC for psych, that's right, yes, you're telling me about this. And then the University of British Columbia is gorgeous. I love that place, and you studied psych there, which is awesome. And then you started picking up modeling around that time?
Yep.
Okay.
Randomly got into it. Yeah. Through a charity show in school, and then just start picking up as and then went traveling for it. And so I had 2 years kind of stopped schooling and traveled more for modeling. And then I did 1 semester, both traveling and doing 4 classes online. That burned me out. And I was like, okay, I better come back and finish the school and then go back traveling for modeling. But that's when my grandpa got really ill, with dementia. And it made me realize, first of all, I have to give up traveling and taking care of him. But it's also made me realize life is so short. You only live once, as far as I know. And so I better live for myself. That's where I was always wanted to try out acting, so I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
Wow. So sometimes it's really beautiful when we look at things from a perspective of maybe these things are not happening to me in a way that harms me, but rather they're happening for me and for our family to awaken us to certain things. And so for you, it was this fire under your butt that, you have 50 more years of life to live. And do you want to do what you love every day?
Yeah.
And,
and live for other people's expectation or for myself? And I think my upbringing was very much about being a nice girl and pleasing, and a lot of fulfill my parents' expectation, which, no complaint. It brought me to beautiful places, but at the same time, they're part of myself that I've never really embraced, which was always artistic. But my parents always pushed me towards more safe route of science or commerce. That's what a lot of Chinese parents would feel safe about.
Likewise, this goes into so many other cultures around the world as well. Armenian, for myself as well, was very heavy towards law or doctor or whatever's most conventional.
Reasonably. I mean, art doesn't make stable money, and it's a really risky career. Like, my family, none of them are artists, so it's hard to imagine that as a career path. I didn't even imagine myself being able to do it now full time, but I think that's when you align your purpose with your passion, and then hard work actually can happen. It's not easy, but it does happen, yeah.
And there's a social fabric redesign that we're going through, hopefully, where it is more conducive for people to express themselves in the arts, and that it is people able to become that unique instrument that they want to play in this big symphony that's unfolding, that is our consciousness evolution that's happening. And that being so important, there's been so many examples in the past of Lorenzo de' Medici in Florence doing things like patroning Michelangelo da Vinci Botticelli, enabling the Italian Renaissance. There's other examples like even prior to any of the agrarian days, but going even back tens of thousands, 100,000 plus years ago, there's just periods of time of just play. You just hunt, gather, and play. And that may be storytell. That may be through acting, singing, dancing, music of all sorts. And that's such a core aspect of creativity and art is play.
Yeah, and it creates the software of how we think and our values and moral compass in a lot of ways. Like if you think about the example that we learn how to conduct ourselves in school, we don't really teach that. We teach science and a lot of practical stuff, but how you learn about the nuances of social interaction, it's a lot from watching either around us or film and television. So yeah, storytelling is the way to one of the main facet, I think, to contribute to the social programming or like software programming for our behaviors.
Yeah. Ooh. I like how you view it from a perspective of kind of like programming my behaviors and my spirituality, my awareness, my consciousness with art and with creativity at young ages, with social emotional intelligence at young ages, makes it so that we're not kind of just stuck in the rational thinking, brain choking the heart style of life that we see basically the economic machinery of today doing that and preventing, this example with parents, preventing children from unleashing their inner artist due to the pressures of this machinery.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to ask you about this endeavor of yours with modeling and how it led you to acting. How did that transition happen?
Well, in modeling, it's very different because modeling, the actual live performance part is all fragmented because you get captured for that moment or the 30 seconds you are on the runway. So it's a very short time of performance. But nonetheless, it's really, really alive when you do it well. And when I was entering the industry, that was like 10, 11 years ago, there was a lot of racial prejudice, which was very fun to have as a chip on the shoulder to prove them wrong in a way. Like everybody literally tells me that they have one Asian model in the agency and they don't need any more because there's no demand. Or probably at that time, the working Asian model in Canada, it was like one or two that I know of. And a lot of shows I was in, it's like the only Asian. So that was interesting. And I'm also short. So it's like two hardwire kind of like barrier that I had a lot of fun to prove people that, oh, I can still do this because I'm extra professional. I'm really working hard and I have a lot of fun personality. So that's something I learned through modeling is like, oh, everybody is beautiful or unique looking one way or another, but that's not what defined your booking or your success. You could push that boundary by really committing and bring a different attitude and change your own game. So I went further than I thought I would, which to me is a very exciting journey, and I learned a ton and I broke out of the comfort shell. And through traveling, it's just like so much I have to learn about myself and how to step into the discomfort and really grow. So
yes,
yeah.
This is another phenomenon that's seen in the different countries around the world with the different demographics of people.
Yeah.
So given if you're a specific skin color or religion or whatever way you want to identify yourself in those specific areas, it may be harder to pursue a specific form of art based on that. And so the sort of like egalitarian view of treating people equally in terms of based on their performance, based on their art, based on their spirit, based on their actual execution and creativity rather than based on their religion or their skin color or whatever. So this is a very interesting, I think, transitory period that we're going through regarding that, as well as our consciousness evolves towards seeing it more as a unity and seeing people more based on what art they actually express. Will you teach us what it means when you like model for like 30 seconds, you were saying, and then there's like, in a sense, you're doing like acting during that 30 seconds. You're acting like a model.
Yeah, like, well, when you are on the runway, what you are trying to portray is whatever that collection. The designer usually has a specific idea behind it. And then when you are on the runway, it's your work. It's your job as a model to carry that, whether it's fierceness, it's androgyny, like whatever concept that they want to experience. To carry that out on the runway. And usually it's like each look takes 30 seconds to like maybe 2 minutes if it's super long one. So you get that very quick time to really translate that. And sometimes like hundreds of people watching the show has to feel it.
Yes.
And it's actually quite a adrenaline rush because you get that one try and then it's so alive. And when you do well and you do feel it, and it's such a powerful, freeing feeling. At least for me, that was how what draws me to runway. And then in front of camera, same thing. For that one moment with the lens, it's click, and then that become an image. And it's a very fragmented way. You pose, and then each moment it could be a very different idea that you are portraying. But again, for editorial or creative terminology and modeling, where you just portraying a theme as well. So it's a lot exploring sexuality, a lot exploring female empowerment.
Yeah.
I myself find during the time it was a lot to do with being fierce, like face brand, because my bone structure and certain look that I gave is a lot to do with like the fierceness. So that becomes some traits that I never thought I would embrace because I told you I was upbringing is people pleasing and being overtly nice and compromising. But in modeling, it actually brings out a different side of me. Yeah.
Whoa, there's a lot there. So one of them is that there's a certain this what you're trying to represent with, given what the designer has made with the clothing that they're aiming to display, is you have to carry a specific persona or personality with that.
Yeah.
Albeit you may have had something happen earlier that day, or a family member fell sick, or whatever it may be. There may be so many other components that you're kind of like juggling at the same time, but you have to, in that frame of time, be I mean, it's kind of like this. We have our hour-long conversation, and you
Yeah.
may be thinking about so many other things, and me too. But we're focused on our conversation. And you have that minute or so slot. So, what is it like? What is a specific clothing or that requires fierceness, and what's another one that requires androgyny? Like, what is that?
That's usually depends on the designer, but I find right now, like cool trend is like a lot of designers that are all exploring androgyny kind of concept where a lot of clothes are both female and male. Like you see women wear a lot of oversized blazer. I think right now we are also in a different climate where women are not always expected to be one way of sexy. So
Yeah.
it's an exciting time where you can be unique. Like even modeling industry start evolving, like different size and shapes, and you can have tattoo, you can have very short, like different hair, different gender ambiguity. Like it's exciting time. So I think that reflected with the time change. And it really depends on the designer, but they are artists too, so they're
Interesting.
always exploring something that reflects
Yeah.
social change.
Is optionality in makeup also
Oh yeah,
something
everything,
that's evolving?
every element of like
That's-
how the
yeah.
makeup changes, hair changes, like the way you walk changes, body shape changes, like how I think back in the day there was a period of like sexy is more one way. Now it's like diverse and more acceptance to all ways of beings. So I think it's evolving. Yeah.
You beginning to give us all of these different nuances to acting or to modeling kind of leads me into those are actually quite similar nuances of acting.
Yeah.
So the nuances of modeling actually have a lot to do with
Yeah.
acting.
Yeah.
So what was it like for you then to be like, okay, I want to unleash even further towards acting? And how did you get that started?
That was always in there. Like when I was in high school, I did some drama, and then in university, all my side electives were like film study, like art history, or I joined like theater clubs and did shows. So it's always something I want to explore, but I never truly commit into exploring until facing severe illness from my grandpa, that I was like, oh, life short is short, so let's get on it. And that's where I find I went into it with the expectation, like not it as a career. I still had a full-time job at the time, but I just wanted to do this for myself for once. And then that evolved into more and more passion developed as I'm delving deeper into looking at myself, so then I can use part of myself and how to channel it for characters.
Yes.
And then as that evolved, like my voice started changing. I used to talk very differently, and my behavior changed, how I view myself, my sexuality, everything started evolving, and spirituality comes in as well. So the whole journey become much more than, oh, I want to do acting. Like I've never thought about it. Oh, I need to be famous or make a lot of money. No, it's just becoming a study of self. And acting always shifts so much, like project to project. Like as we will touch upon, I think like from filming Polar to like producing and leading Lungs is completely different experience.
Yes.
So much to learn, and that's something I'm really excited about too, because you can never learn enough. There's always something, and I'm just hungry for learning. So that's really,
I love it. Yeah. Likewise, and that whole show is so premised on being hungry for learning, and also just a quick bit on this before we move in. I feel as though sometimes this idea of portraying ourselves, whether it be modeling or acting, with a specific intent, when we're trying to convey something like a fierceness or sexuality or an androgyny or whatever it may be, given that small frame, it kind of reminds me of the way that we communicate this extended phenotype of ours out into the world, where we're trying to sell ourselves on all of our social profiles a very specific way. And so there's a little bit of both. Yeah, I get it, but I also am trying to get people to like be kind of and be kind of cool with like, you know, having a little like chin sometime, or like, you know, being like, nah, you know, on the, you know, just like be quirky, dorky, nerdy, geeky,
all different aspects of yourself. And I told you about, I was training in clowning for the past year.
Yes.
In clowning, we talked about mask, and how I got into clowning was I told the teacher, I was like, I really need to just explore the authentic. Like, I want to know who is Fei, like the most authentic version of myself. Because honestly, we always play mask somewhere. Like, we always have a certain kind of identity in all different situations. So who is real me? Especially after playing so many characters, I was like, okay, but what's me? What's other people? Like, why am I able to do this choice or feel that emotion? And so I went in with the intention to really learn my authentic self. And my clown teacher ended up saying, so what do you think is authentic? Why do you think all these other masks is not you? It could be you. It's just extension of you. And then of course, there's rooted value. Now I think there's more authentic in consistency, in like what's your root, what you deeply believe and won't compromise, and then cross situation that will always guide you. But then of course we are always forced and shaped by circumstances, so we may choose different things based on situation, but there is roots there.
Yeah, I'm so excited to also talk about this from this, you know, you heard me say a little bit ago, this like this extended phenotype, or the way that we share our status in the hierarchy out to the world, whether it be travel or whether it be through
always best version of
ourselves. Yes. And so when you do something like work with these like acting coaches on these things like clowning, you kind of you dive a little bit deeper into what is practicing exaggerating these different personas.
You're laughing at it.
Yeah.
So instead of being controlled by this, I have this identity that I have to live up to, or have this ego that I'm wearing, it's more like, honestly, my truth is I'm aware this is an ego that I'm wearing right now, and I'm and I can extend it and make it really funny, and then everybody can identify with it, because everybody wears that at one point or another. So then it become a release, and it become a lesson, so people feel it's okay to release this certain kind of image, or to wear another image that is completely different.
I love that. So it's like, you know, if we were to play right now and we were to say like, you are Alan, and you have this show where you sit here in the chair and ask people all of these questions, and you know, you kind of like make fun of yourself. You're trying to get to the ultimate nature of reality, and that's all that you care about. And so you're Mr. King of the ultimate nature of reality, you know, and so that way we're just poking fun and over exaggerating. You know,
and then it holds no power over you. Then it become not such a ego thing that you have to hold on tight to.
Yeah. Because look at me, I'm just like so joyous right now. Just like, because it's hilarious doing this. It's super fun. And Miss Fei Ren, who's all about acting and modeling and directing, and has all these great shows going on for her. And she knows that she has all these nuances to acting.
Pretend to be successful. Pretend to know what I'm talking about. It's like... It's such a beautiful journey with clowning, because I really learned to not take myself too seriously, and to develop that joy and to play. And I think with a lot of acting training, certain different school of thought, I got a little bit too dark and too serious. And when you lose the joy, it shows in your work. It become a little bit too intense, and it really carries into my body. That I was telling you that.
Yeah, let's explore this one.
It actually brought me to a journey of healing myself, because I wasn't aware there is an emotional body.
Yeah.
And emotion, like through imagination of all the character work, my emotional body actually going through the trauma.
Dude, let's break this down with the actual story. So this is for, let's do the lungs example.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were directing and producing and
producing and leading,
because there was another director. Yeah. So producing and leading in lungs.
Yeah.
And you were teaching me that this is very interesting because it's not the set design does not have lights. It does not have props.
The playwright Duncan Macmillan, he's like very specific on no set design, no light, no scene changes like that is indicated through anything. So, and no miming. So everything is through relationship and dialogue. But it was crystal clear for the audience, and it's time lapse of the whole lifetime from the two-person falling in love all the way until the death.
So there's a lot here because it requires the story, like you said, is the two-person falling in love until death, but also that in preparation for all of these performances, so you have these performances in live theater settings, and you're doing this over and over again, days at times, and you have to, when you come in, you have to, no matter what happened that day, you have to calibrate your performing with your partner that you're performing with. So you have to do these deeply spiritual exercises of connecting to them through their eyes and doing that to ground yourself in that relationship.
We touched upon, like you were mentioning eye contact as a spiritual exercise, but I was mentioning it's a very common exercise in acting.
Yes.
And a lot of people in normal life, we call civilians, they're not comfortable with just like eye contact for an extensive length of period. But in acting, because, well, I have to portray this lifetime story, love story with this actor who is just my coworker and friend in real life. To portray that kind of chemistry on stage, we have to build connections. And whether it's through endowing, substituting, or like me imagine him as some other people that would referencing to the story, or through just simply using eye contact to build that connection. It's a process. Like 2 hours before the show, usually we would have like warm-ups and relaxations, and then
that's like an athlete does.
A lot of people compare acting, especially theater acting, with athletes, because it is a craft and it is very physical, and they do have some studies shows that the actors, what they go through adrenaline wise is the same amount during acting, is same amount when they encounter a car accident. It's a lot of adrenaline rush, and it's a lot of pressure because you're performing live. You kind of can't fail, and you have 3 months prior to really exercise everything, or we had 3 months prior to really rehearse. But still, there are so much elements that could go wrong, and you have to trust the process. And so all you can do is preparation and do as much as you can, and then you just let go of the work and allow it be that channel. So, but you prepare your channel through those 2 hours of prep before the shows, and then now this is where you were starting to explain this to us. So then you take on the actual spirit of the character in the play itself. Yeah, well, I would explain it like, for example, I would have already taken on the character for a while.
For the 2 hours.
So then all my muscle memories from months of rehearsal is there. Yeah. So me is not really as Fei. It's my friend during the time said my speech rhythm, everything is quite off compared to normal Fei. So they know that it's the character. After they saw the show, they were like, oh, that's why Fei is acting weird, because she is carrying on the character. But it's more like concentrated during the show. And then because the show has so much, like we delve into heavy topic of like miscarriage, like betrayal, and then like there's a lot of love and loss. You go through those roller coasters and you don't really heal from it. So at the end of each night, my body is really felt like being hit by a truck. Like it was literally in pain all over the place. So for me, it become very, very important to find a place where I can release it. And
because you took on miscarriage, you took on betrayal, you took on these...
Through imagination and through these
acting.
emotional response, right?
You're trying to convince, you're trying to sell the audience on the story.
Yeah.
So you have to be really good at embodying it.
And so your body can't distinguish whether it happened or not. All it had is like, it felt like it went through a lot. And that's where your stamina as an actor has to be really good, because you carry it night after night, and then you have to be okay and functional as a human being. You can't be like, okay, I'm gonna use this part of my trauma, but no, it's that part of trauma only on stage exists for 5 minutes, and then you have to heal and move on. So how you can be okay with it, that's become where craft kicks in. Like, it's not just instinctually like vomit it out. It's like you have to reproduce it night after night to some extent. It can vary in performance, but the given circumstances force you to react to the specific trauma, right? So your body, like as an actor, I think a lot of studios doesn't really teach about. They teach us how to get into the acting, get into the character, but not so much about how to get out. That become my journey the past year, to try to figure out, how do I get out safely? How do I release it so then I don't need to have this affecting my real life and I can have a functioning body. Like, I get to a place, I was so burned out last year. I was like pain, like just tension in the muscles, like nothing can really work, and I can't sleep, I can't breathe well, like it started affecting my life, my work, like everything. So
there has to be some sort of a process for actors to do things like take what they've been channeling on the set through the communication of the performance, but then be able to somehow energetically kind of like shake it, release it.
You have to release it. And that's what my clown teacher taught really well, is like each time when we put on a mask, there's a ritual, like, okay, now it's the mask on. And then he was really, really particular about, you come off the performance, you take off the mask and go back to your ringmaster. And that's something I find it's a really good like a diligent thing you have to do as actor. Like you have to take off the character at the end of the night at the best possible way.
I love your focus on ritual. It's a ritual to put on the mask. It's a ritual to take off the mask.
Or routine, right?
Or routine, yeah.
So for the lungs, it's so because of over the year trying to find ways of healing, I collected some different ways, but one of them is dancing turned out to be really good.
Yeah.
And I've had talks with different people healing from like deep grief or trauma, that actively dancing to happy things and really having a diaphragm laugh, like those deep giggle, really helps, because it brings you into that childlike quality where it's full of joy and innocence and love.
I love it.
And you reprogram your body into like a joy state instead of always stuck in kind of heavy energy.
Yeah.
And through dance, like my clown teacher also said this, like he said animals, when they are in shock and they freeze, and then after they know they're safe, they kind of like release it, right? Yeah. But we as human, when we are like experiencing something in life, right now in modern days, we don't go out and release it consciously.
We like dwell and ruminate.
Yeah, we kind of just like sit in it, and it's stuck in your body.
So we start eating and distracting ourselves with social media.
Yeah. Or like
we can physically hack the energetic release.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people choose to exercise when they feel stressed.
Exactly. Yeah. Exercise. Well, exercise is a great way, but I'm not into gym, so for me it's like silly dance at home. And then I can meditate.
Make yourself laugh.
Calm down. Yeah.
To that childlike state of love, innocence, purity. Tell us the story of after you do this performance. You have this specific segment in there that ends up awakening one of the audience members that had an similar instance with his girlfriend.
Yeah. Well, that's something I find it's quite common with good stories. Like this story, there was a moment of dealing with grief very differently. So my character went through miscarriage, and then my partner, like my boyfriend in the play, wasn't giving me enough space, and he made it mostly about himself or trying to get emotional reassurance when I'm depressed and kind of closed off. And my character was just asking for holding the space, where he was trying to guilt trip me and eventually cheated on me. So that's the storyline. But to have that in the play, and one of my friend, he came to watch the show and had a realization of why his ex and him didn't work out after the postpartum depression. He finally understood what she was asking him off, because she couldn't articulate maybe, or she wasn't able to get through him about, she just needed him to be a bigger person and hold the space for her instead of telling her what to do and try to fix it all the time. And so all she needed was for him to hold that space. But of course, it's grieving for everybody and shifts for everybody, right? So like, it's then how this kind of couple communication was failing on stage awakens or shows the other person, oh, I understand my life, like what happened, and maybe not do that again.
Wow. Yeah, I love that story. So the combination of really good story with really good acting can trigger people to realize some of their past, and the way that they may have can see it from a new lens that shows them it more clearly, and integrates some of the awakening states within them through being a guest at an art performance.
That's why I think theater is so important, because you actually feel the energy of the actor. You really feel it. I rarely, with movies and things like that, I do cry, but it's very rare. But with theater, if it's good, usually it's so impactful, because you really see and witness a person going through things, and you really care about them. With good acting, like good writing, you start really going the journey with the actor, and then everybody in the black seats, like audience seats is usually dark, you really can project yourself onto them and learning through that journey. So I think that's a really powerful form of art that too bad we don't really, not many cities make living like have a good theater support.
Yeah, that circles us to the importance of the arts and humanities and unleashing that into the world. Okay, also, this is quite different from something like a Netflix produced show like Polar. So with Lungs, you're doing how many performances was it over how long of a period of time?
We did 11 over 3 weeks.
11 over 3 weeks. And then these are very like ticket sales at theaters, and then you guys try and raise money to be able to do more art and performance in theater, versus these like big budget Netflix shows that have like people flying from around the world into. You guys were on site in, was it Montreal or Toronto? It was Toronto. On site in Toronto, and like you're like filming for 4 months, just filming 4 months with like actual really high quality cameras, and like there's going to be so much post-production that happens. This is a completely different animal.
Where this one, like Netflix one, it feels like a little screw on a big machine.
That's a good way to put it.
Where the lens is literally 2 actors, so 2-person play with like 4 producing partners. So it's like, get on it.
Yes.
And nobody can fail. Everybody has to be there and really show up. Otherwise, it's just extremely challenging. Where the other one is like hundreds of people on it. But with that one, interestingly, it was a beautiful learning experience as well. Of course, there's ego start kicking in. It's like, whoa, this is Hollywood, and all these famous people I get to talk to and befriend with, and it's a different challenge for artistic concentration, I think. And the set is really a lot of shifts happening on the set all the time with film acting, I find. It's different from theater. It's like one experience you live through the whole thing in that 2 hours or an hour and a half, where on set it's like the scene was all not chronological and it's chopped up into
this is
very
crazy.
small pieces. So
is it like as short as just a minute scene or like a couple minutes scene, and that sometimes the end of the movie can be, or middle of the movie can be being done at the beginning of the time frame?
Yeah, it's always chopped up. So it depends on the location. So the beginning of the movie we shot like 3 months after we wrapped, because we have to wait for the weather to become summer.
Yeah.
But then we have to know what's the before moment and what has happened so far.
Yeah.
So I think that's something. And also, like, there's so many people on set. We were shooting a lot on locations. There's a lot of things that just very distracting. So to be able to focus and to deliver the work when the time is up, or when it's your time, that's kind of a big challenge I learned. And to understand that I learned a lot from working with these amazing actors who are famous already, and they have no ego. And I'm just like, oh, that's refreshing, because they were just passionate about work.
That's great.
And they weren't like playing hierarchies, and they weren't like, oh, I have way bigger trailers or take me seriously. They just like, they're just so down to earth. So,
excellent. Oh, I love hearing that.
Yeah.
That's great.
So it's very different from what I heard about Hollywood and da-da-da. And everybody is deeply passionate and experienced. So that was a really beautiful experience to learn. I also encountered like my own ego in terms of like, oh, I don't think I deserve to be there. So my insecurities start popping out. And to overcome that and not make it about me, make it about the character. And where my character has to be super confident. So it's an interesting thing to play, to bring into the character, where maybe deep down she isn't that confident, but the more insecure she felt, she more so have to prove herself. And that's usually the case in real life too. Yeah.
I'm happy that you shared with us that there are aspects of Hollywood that are in the more egoless, for the art, for the inspiration side of things, because we have a very one-way, usually meme that comes from Hollywood, which is ego-filled, conspicuous consumption-filled. So it's good to hear that side of things, and hopefully we can, as we awaken, we catalyze more of that good side, the benevolent side of it, for the arts, for the inspiration, not for the ego.
I think that for good artists, it's usually like you have to have some level of ego death, and so if you look at all these Hollywood stars when they are doing interviews, a lot of them are very grounded and they are saying really important things that are social conscious and really focus on craft. I think it's how we social package them. Because like there's scandals and all these little stories popping out, which is not necessarily them, it's maybe people projecting on it. That happens. Or if, yeah, there will be negative story, but that's kind of in every industry, right? There will be negative stereotypes by a few individual that really pops out and give that impression of what Hollywood is. But I think wherever the good art is, like good artists and everything, they have to be, certain level decent human and able to take that ego suits out.
Part of that also speaks to me about how if we can figure out which people in Hollywood, which people in Silicon Valley that run the biggest companies here, or the ones that run the billionaires of the world, or the ones that are leading countries of the world, if we can figure out which ones have the deepest states of actual true ego loss and true feelings of interconnectedness with other humans and the environment, that will, in a sense, if you take like the biometric state of Jeff Bezos and you take the biometric state of the Dalai Lama and you try and compare those two, the state of their EEG, fMRI, the state of their EKG, their heart, the state of their microbiome, like what is their auric energy expressing on a moment-to-moment basis? That can actually help so much with Hollywood being able to tell who's got it for the ego and for the materialism, who's in it for the actual acting and inspiration of other people.
I think usually we can tell without all these like actual science. It would be interesting to study and have the data.
Yes.
But I think you usually get a pretty good handle just by interacting with people.
But then it's also subjective, which is a problem, albeit you and I can have fun with it subjectively, and that's really great when you and I say that, oh, this person had more ego acting, this one has less, right?
Yeah.
But then when we can objectively measure it with biometrics, I can basically share raw data with the rest of the world and say that, hey, this is the raw data. This is not Fei and Alan talking about how we feel about someone. This is raw data that does not lie, and it has been proven longitudinally 5 weeks measuring every single day this person's biometric state of their consciousness. So I think that whole aspect of things is going to be, this actually leads me to the next point, which is about spiritual awakening in general, because you basically in the last, I think, year or so have been going through more and more awakening yourself, and that immediately started butterflying effect for you into your family, into your friends. So it was kind of like, in a sense, it's no longer as easy for a friend to just come and kind of like monopolize on your time and just kind of, as people sometimes say, vampirically try and draw as much energy out to kind of fill themselves, but rather, you're not willing to do that as much. You're willing to focus in more on trying to make a big picture splash to thousands or even hundreds of thousands, hopefully, of people in the world through what you do, instead of just that one-on-one exchange, or your parents, in the sense of, this happens to me, it happens to all of us as we awaken. We no longer react to the ways that we get triggered by our families. So all of a sudden your family is sitting there and they're just, sometimes they're just yelling, or they're just being negative for, 3 minutes straight on just chewing you out for something. And then you just sit there and you're just looking at them with love, and you just don't say anything. And they go, what do you? And all of a sudden sometimes they start like crying themselves just because you're there present with them in a state of unconditional love. Teach us about your stories with awakening and how it's affected your family, friends.
So my personal journey, I feel like it was quite lucky because I have a group of really beautiful people around me that are awakening at the same time. I think we just positively affecting each other and constantly sharing our journey together, and really started a meditation when I was filming Polar, because after filming I was just in a different time zone, or film until 4 a.m. and then I have to sleep at the odd hours. and I just started meditating to sleep. And that opened a different portal eventually to like, oh, I can actually trying to meditate to raise myself into a different, more mindful way of thinking. And then like so many different things. Going back to with acting, some of the character emotional body, I start to have issues. So I start manifesting illness that that no specialist can explain, or they were like, oh, it shows that you're fine, but I'm experiencing pain. And they were like, oh, then that must be like psychological and And so I was forced to be like, okay, so now there's no medicine, no specialist can help me, so what can I do? And I went into this, I had a really beautiful acupuncturist to help me to heal. And it was dealing with just acupuncture and guided meditation, but dealing with emotionally and psychologically channeling like positive light into different part of my body. And really breathe through it. And of course, I also had a really amazing therapist that really helped me to uproot some of my past that formed a certain negative pattern that developed a lot of victim thinking or very self-sabotaging way of talking. And that, to build that awareness and then start to accept it, oh, that's part of me from before and maybe no longer serving me. And now I have to, like, now I know better, I have to choose a different way that is more positive, really helped me. So it's like hand in hand from both psychologist and also these holistic like healing. And with those things happening, I start become very aware of my energy, just like in terms of my body start very in tune with. So one of my psychologists used to tell me that, oh, you have to connect your rational brain with your gut feeling or intuition. I'm like, but how? Yeah. So past year, I felt like I developed pretty good into listening to my gut feelings. So, or listening to my body in general. So if I have hanging out with certain people that before I would afterwards go back and have a headache or something, and I would ignore it and thinking that's something wrong with my body. Now I would be reflecting, was that too much energy consuming? What's the dynamic in that relationship? Maybe my body is sending me some kind of signal.
Absolutely.
And it was really interesting how since the summer until now, I was like, oh, there are certain situations or certain people that after the hangout, I would have headaches, I would have all these physical symptoms. That was really the moment I did meditation, clear out negative energy or recharging with meditation, trying to imagine lights into my body, that I'm fine. So I don't need Advil, I don't need any kind, I'm not sick in any way, it just energetically I was leaking. So now I'm thinking more in those terms, and it really helped me to guide who I choose to be around and what kind of job I would choose to do. And I think that's what I essentially think it's mind with body in tune together. So my body telling me something, and my mind is like, okay, analyze, realizing maybe this is the case, and then did a few try and error, and that's where I become more in tune. And then with the friends and family, it's like my family, because before I would be more the fixer of the home, so I always deal with their issues. Always have this codependent relationship where I feel like a martyr. I feel like self-worth goes up if I can fix them in some way. But then that just perpetually disempowered them to solve their own issue. And it built a really different kind of toxic in some way relationship. I get burned out as well. So now I'm like learning that, okay, I can set boundaries with my family and tell them, by the way, it's not okay to just dump it on.
Yep.
especially when I'm not well. So now they would still ask for help, but with the mindfulness, they would be like, how are you doing? We don't want to bother you with this, but we're kind of experiencing this. But because I have so many tools now that how to deal with situation, I would be offering the tools, but without feeling like, oh, I have to really fix it for them. So it's like learn to detach with love, but also just know that it's not my responsibility. And then they had to step up.
Yeah.
So in turn, that they are, and also they see positive shift in me. So whatever I'm telling them, I'm no longer just like, oh, do this, do that. It's more like I attracted them to trying to experience what I'm experiencing. So they're like, oh, she's been always meditating around us, and it seems like she's doing well. Before they would talk while I'm meditating, but now they're like, oh, she's meditating. Okay, we'll just let her be. And then they would be quiet. But then they, at the same time, I think it's affected by it.
Yeah, the collective consciousness.
Yeah. And so that was a beautiful thing to see. Like, okay, they are shifting. And there were so many beautiful things that I started discovering with my family. There's a new relationship built, more deep dialogue with emotional exchange with my father. We start expressing, like my parents has never said I love you. It's just not my family culture.
I've heard this before as well. Yes.
So it's like,
whereas my mom and I are saying it to each other all the time.
But then recently, like my parents would say things, they use action and they use food to express love. So I never doubt their love for me.
Exactly. There's other ways to express love.
But they never said those words. But now they're learning new love language because of it, because of all the work and the communication. So now my parents start saying I love you, which is huge at my age.
Wow.
Started from probably last month.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
whoa, those are huge shifts. It's
huge shift for them. They never expressed it in their life to start being comfortable to express it. And for me to express back that they feel loved and they start doing things differently and reacting to their life choice differently. So that was really beautiful to see.
Wow. There's a couple things here. One of them is that I was just having a call with a close friend of mine last night who continues to pile on the importance of his business, and he's sacrificing his well-being while he's doing that. And it's so interesting talking to entrepreneurs, artists, different types of creative people that are trying to build the next world, build the future. And in the process of trying to bring their unique gifts into the world, play their unique instrument in the symphony, they put their wellness on the back seat, thinking that by doing so they can focus more on their business, their creativity, etc. But really, if you up your time on your wellness, if you stop the smoking of the cigarettes, stop the drinking of the soda, stop the drinking of the alcohol, exercise more, sleep better, all these types of basic things, all of a sudden your productivity and your focus and your ideas on where you need to be passing your time every single day will make it so that your business and your creative, all that stuff actually becomes even more efficient than when you were trying to sleep only 3 hours a night or trying to, etc. So that point of the relationship between the instrument that's being played in the symphony and the actual individual like vehicle that the instrument is being played through, the vehicle itself being in peak shape makes it so that the instrument is played in its peak performance, basically. And then this other point that you mentioned I think is really good is this is so much about skillful spirituality. We've done some episodes on it too, and it's not just about probably the most common way that it's portrayed right now in this like skillful spirituality way is that it's not necessarily about you making an influence on someone else and feeling like you are responsible for making that influence, but rather it's something more along the lines of being so skillful and being so strategic that you're kind of you yourself unconditional love, interconnectedness all the time, and you carrying that around as an aura makes it so that other people they themselves can't trigger you, and then they themselves see your peace and tranquility in their mirror, and they realize, fuck, I've just been yelling or like being negative or just maybe I should respect the person that's sitting there and meditating. Why am I starting to feel more calm and more at love? But it's also hard because our family members are some of the people, or our partners are some of the people in our relationships, or the ones that are business relationships too, that we think that it's our responsibility to change, to help them see their worldview and stuff like that. And really, it's by being our best, we catalyze the other person to be their best. And it's so hard with like, especially like a family member, because it may not even be, this is really hard to say, but it may not even be in this lifetime for them to learn the specific lesson that they need to learn. So not only is it not you potentially, but they may go until 70 or 80 years of age and die without ever learning that specific lesson that they're supposed to learn. And that's just the way that life goes. It may come up later for them if that is how things work, which many people do.
And also, I think generationally, I mean, our generation is pretty, like, at least in this part of the world, we grew up in a peaceful environment, and we're not traumatized by layered trauma, by war and all that. My grandparents, they experienced all that. So their coping mechanism throughout that period is block out their whole emotional being so they can survive through those severe, terrible things happened to them. And so for their lifetime, their mission is not to have spiritual awakening. Their mission is to survive so their offspring can hopefully have another level of living. And so I think that's totally fine. Like if I have no expectation of my grandparents to have any changes because they've been through so much, for them to be able to provide for us, like I have nothing but gratitude. Like
wow, that's a great way to put it too.
And but at the same time, my grandparents are changing too, beautifully. And it was grandpa has dementia specifically, but even like when I go into the house, before I would feel really deeply sad and stressed for not able to help him more to release his mental pain or confusion. But now I would go in with like meditation music for removing negative energy. And it's crazy the shift it happens.
Wow.
Because grandpa would be having his hallucination episode, and sometimes it's really distressing. So I know that he's having a bad time. But as I'm playing these things, slowly he will calm down. And I don't know if actually it works. Like, I don't know the scientific study behind how it works, or if there is scientific
I think I can maybe
behind
take a small guess at it, which is that if they themselves don't immediately get triggered by you being at peace or trying to play something to alter their mood, which sometimes they do and just tell you to stop, and then you're like, okay. But if you just continue in the state of peace, I mean, that's not something that you can technically stop, but then what happens usually, at least physiologically, that it seems like is there's something to do with not only the auric and energetic states, but also on a physiological level, neurological level, mirror neurons.
Safe.
Safety, decreases in cortisol, increases in oxytocin, things like that. We're trying to understand it better, but I think those are some of the most like bare bones ways of trying to put it.
Yeah. So I feel like even them start shifting, and now they express more gratitude, which never happened before. And it brings them joy, brings me joy, and the relationship starts shifting in a different way. Instead of like blaming or complaining all the time, it's in a higher frequency of vibration, I think.
Yeah.
Wow,
I feel like so many people around the world crave that next awakening for some of their family members. So it's actually really important that you're talking about it on the program. And it seems like actually a lot of your acting and modeling kind of like principles led you to become a better human and spiritualist, in the sense that you're at play with the energies of your family members in a more tactful way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think with acting, also reading all these stories, you really start learning different ways of lives, and essentially almost all the stories comes down to love and communication. So I think with a lot of spirituality come to play is about communicating better, sharing that love better, because we touched on a little bit of, I was saying, you were telling me the concept of you believed a God was like embedded in every one of us and in everything.
Yeah.
And I was talking my therapist, not my therapist, my acupuncturist. She was talking about how consciousness, universal consciousness, is kind of a trickles down. There's a logic behind it, and it's behind everything that we create. It's from source, or however you call it.
Exactly.
But there is an intelligence behind it, and
Yes.
and we can like, if we each individually changes and heals,
Yeah.
and we don't project and release negative, like not mindful, like energy, we know that it's not another person's responsibility, and we are not projecting more negative things out there. Things will butterfly shifts into a positive place. And there was a quote that I wrote, it's like, if you want to heal the world, heal yourself first.
Exactly.
And I really feel that now. Like, as I'm healing better, things around me just getting better. And I really, there was one point I asked my therapist, I was like, well, with my family being like this, with me choosing art, there will be always unstable, like, drama, and all these things happen. How do I get to peace?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, that's what you have as peaceful is not really external, it's internal. So you have to find your own value and how you can be peace within the situation that you are in, because these things will always be there.
Yeah.
So then that really shifted, starting from like multiple things, but I find, okay, internally I'm shifting, externally things still happening, but I'm coping better. They're shifting better. Everything starts shifting. So
I love it. Oh, this is so warming for my heart, and I hope for other people. This is something that's, these nodes in our social network are the closest to us, our family members, our partners, and our relationships and our businesses, etc. And so to master this skillfully is a deep process of self-work and anchoring the divine and healing through us, and then also realizing tactfully, spiritually, skillfully understanding how to engage with those nodes around us, to not have unnecessary moments of suffering, to catalyze more moments of awakening. I love this. Also on the plane while we were flying, you had honeysuckle. I thought this was so interesting when we pulled this up, because this is something that I think has a lot to do with the evolution of consciousness of spirituality, which is that when you take something that looks like, thousands or even tens of thousands of years of lineage and history around knowing how to engage with plants medicinally, knowing how to engage with animals in a healing and therapeutic way, versus the killing millions of chickens per hour for food and for treating pharmaceuticals as the only solution for healing certain ailments of the body. When we looked up honeysuckle, which is something that you had with you, that you can pour into just a dry form into hot water and stir it up and drink it. And that has thousands of years of lineage of understanding of healing properties, versus something that is, when we look it up on Baidu, which is China's most popular search engine, that honeysuckle comes up immediately with like therapeutic properties, and you're looking at it and it's like plant medicine style. And on Google, when you look up honeysuckle, it's
a plant.
it's a plant, and it also the only source of it's like buried the source of the medicinal benefits, and it's on like WebMD, and even then it's not even that studied or cared about.
Yeah.
It's like go look at the pharmaceutical solutions for these things instead of plants.
Yeah, it's well, my mom is she's chief physician in specialized for kidney. But in her hospital, it's a combination of Western medicine and Chinese traditional herbal medicine.
Yes.
And that's within her practice, that's the most effective way. And I think it's such a shame that in the North American, like in the medical world, I think herbal medicine is not taken seriously.
Yeah.
But like I said, the honeysuckle is such a simple herbal medicine, and I had the flu, and the next day I was okay. So it was so effective compared to like any kind of flu medication I can get in the market here. But I don't know if you can actually buy it here.
Probably at some of the most herbal stores.
Yeah, naturopath.
Your teaching there of your mom does a specialist work in kidneys in the hospital.
Yeah.
When you say that the focus is both with Western medicine, with Eastern medicine, what I think is holistic. What comes to mind?
Exactly.
Holistic.
Yeah, holistic.
Because otherwise, it's kind of like rationality and intuition, or science and spirituality. All these different ways of viewing the same thing, which is marrying these two to make it so that you have a whole idea of a life, reality, healing. Medicine.
Yeah, a lot of Chinese traditional medicine, I think, is more about the healing from the root. So it's not symptom based. It's more like, okay, which part, what happened to that part? Let's correct that part. So it's slower, but Western medicine suppress the symptoms, so you are not suffering as much, and it's quick. But then, does it heal? Some are, but. Yeah, like I think a lot of medicine we can get at the counter is very symptom-based for those flu or cold or cough. So in those cases, I think it would be interesting to explore more holistic ways for us, for North America. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to ask you a couple other quick thoughts on the way out. One of the questions is if you think that we're all one.
Yeah. Well, like, undeniably, I think we gave so much labels and everything, but come down to it, it's all human ego. And it's just a way of feeling superior, or like psychologically they have study, right? Once you label them into them and us, there is conflict and competition.
Yeah.
But it's just random study where they just labeled the same classroom of people, and they're all just people. And I think in society, in a large scale, and that's what we do, it's like we label them by countries or by race, by religion, or by gender, or whatever. But come down to it, we're just people. And same with animals. Yeah, and plants, like part of the earth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really warming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my naturopath said this thing that was really beautiful. She's like, oh, the original like source is all love,
Yeah.
and we were born with a lot of unconditional love.
Yes.
And know how to love and learn how to receive love. We know how to receive love, and then as the social programming goes, some of that we are forgotten or being buried by fear.
Yeah.
So I think now we're just in a different social movement of learning to unprogram that fear, recognize certain fear is not serving us, and or not allowing the fear to control us, and just go back to that loving state. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a vital pillar of our next world.
Yeah.
Having that unconditional love from birth until death, and a social fabric that makes it so that it's
Yeah.
just, that is all that the option is. There is no option for
Yeah.
the fear and for it makes
Well,
me
fear is useful, is a useful information, but not letting it control us, right? Where just
Yeah.
like a lot of marketing is using fear, and it's always not enough and everything, so we just keep consuming and feeling more holes. But
This-
instead of just feel ourselves
yes.
with love.
Yes, this creation though has the exact recipe for being most beautiful or challenging or evolutionary or growth oriented, because there are those feelings of challenge and pressure coming from the sides of good and evil, or whatever, however you want to view it.
We talked about good and evil, where I was talking about there's an indigenous story of like the white and black wolf.
Yeah. Share it.
And then they are fighting, and then the kid asks the elder, it's like, well, the elder was saying that within us everybody has a white and black wolf and always fighting.
Yes.
Never killing each other. But the kid was like, then how do we know who's gonna win? And then the elder said, whomever you feed.
Yeah.
So always feed. I don't like to say white and black wolf. Let's just say light and dark.
Light and darker. Just
Yeah.
always feed love.
Feed love.
Feed love.
So whatever represents
Yeah.
light and love, harmony, peace, if we feed more into it instead of the fear, ego, and anger.
Yeah.
So that's something that next stage I will practice is to, because I was recognizing, accepting a lot of my pattern that weren't serving me, but instead of keep talking about these patterns, I will put more my energy onto the pattern that now I have accepted as new programming, that I know now how to choose. Hopefully. Well, it's constantly evolve, but now I know what's serving me better. And hopefully I will feed into those options more. Yeah.
I must mention this, that this whole idea of going towards light and picking light and all this type of stuff, that it is also deeply visible in the way that we as a society are starting to call things like light, purity, and people's skin color. People want to be more light. They want to marry people that are more light. They want their babies to be more light. So in a sense, people of darker skin tones are, in a sense, disadvantaged in that sense. And I think that's also very interesting to think about, is if we label this light and dark and feeding light as love, then we see dark or darker skin tone as something that can, again, just, this is a tough thing. So is there a way to maybe view a darker skin tone as also love and feeding that as love? And then, maybe seeing sometimes a whiter skin tone can be evil. And we can see that through many of the times in the way that people are feeding their own psychopathic egos at the top of corporations and countries and wealth in general, conspicuous consumption, all these types of things, and stomping on the shoulders of other people on their climbs up. So I think that could be another interesting component to our view on that.
Yeah, so let's not call it different colors and since we're right now in a sensitive time period where colors of the skin plays so much in politics and villainized in so many ways, or different conflicts around the skin color, let's just call it fitting into the love more.
Fitting into the love,
peace, and harmony
versus
more. Hate, fear, distraction.
I like
and
that.
Anger.
I like that. So, but it serves its purpose in creation. Fear, hate, etc. Serves its purpose.
It has
evolutionary,
its reason, but shouldn't take over and shouldn't be the drive for us.
And the more that we feel the love and that clearly, we anchor our those feelings of love in our own vehicular channel that is our body, and then it makes it so that we can oracally bring forth that into our families, our communities, our unique instrument that's being played. That's how it really deeply feels. And I feel really good. I have one more question. What do you think is most beautiful?
Wow, that's a huge question. Most beautiful. I think love. Love is, self-love, love between people, love between family, friends, everything.
Yeah.
Love between the animals, the things. Yeah.
I love that answer and the breakdown of it. Yeah, because tapping into that is potentially one of the most upstream things that we must come together on and solve to solve all the downstream issues.
Yeah, just a thought. Like one of my girlfriend told me this, that she started spending 20 minutes a day telling each part of her body how much she loved them and appreciates them.
That's great.
I find that was so refreshing.
Yeah.
Because think about how much, especially now with social media, how much we do to compare and say those negative things to ourselves. And if we can reverse that.
Yeah.
And then how that gonna affect other people.
Just look at the hands. The
Our
hands
hand is
have been
magical.
doing everything for us
so much
since,
for us.
and feet too. Feet and
if
hands.
You think about
Yeah, those two specifically need lots of love because they don't get it. Brain, heart, gut get lots of love more so than hands and feet get very, very little.
I love you.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
So then, being able to trip out on that love for it is a crucial towards building that great future. So, Fei, this has been so fun.
Thank you so much, Alan.
Thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you. This is so beautiful that I just met 2 days before on the airplane.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for talking to me.
You're so welcome. Thanks for all your great work. Source has all these ways of piecing together the puzzle pieces to play in the symphony, and that's how this totally feels. I love it. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below on the episode. Let us know what you're thinking. Do have more conversations with your friends, families, coworkers, people online about acting, about directing, about modeling, about spiritual awakening, about all the things that Fei was teaching us on the program today. Check out all of her links in the bio below as well. Go follow her on Instagram. Her page is great. Go check out the IMDb page. Also check out Polar on Netflix as well. All those links are in the bio below. And also support the artists, the entrepreneurs, the spiritual leaders in your communities and around the world. Support them, help them grow. You can find all of our links to our show in the bio below, to our PayPal, Patreon, cryptocurrency. You can design cool merch and get paid. All those links are in the bio below.
Wow.
And go and build the future, everyone. Manifest your dreams into the world. We love you very much. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you soon. Peace.